high volume. Welcome to Outta Pocket. Here's your host, Michael Davis.
It's time to get out of pocket. I'm your host, Michael Davis, joined by Carsen Williams, joined by Austin Summers from SNIS Fantasy Football. They give really good fantasy football advice. And today he's given really good, hopefully, NBA takes, or they might be out of pocket, and also joined by our producer, Desmond Johnson. Now, if you were watching the show yesterday, you saw me and Des get into a little spat at the end of the show regarding Zion Williamson. Okay, Zion Williamson got hurt in the game against the Lakers in the play-in tournament a few nights ago, and because of that, after a great performance, the Pelicans lost due to Zion's injury, and now the Pelicans have to play for the 8th and final playoff spot tonight against the Sacramento Kings. We'll talk a little bit about Jimmy Butler's injury as well on the show, but wanted to pose to you guys because I think Zion Williamson is an incredible athlete. I think he has a bright future. Not saying that because he played at Duke, but he was a great prospect coming out of high school, coming into the NBA, was the #1 overall pick. So I want to pose this to Austin first. Are you concerned about the injury history so far in Zion's career? And do you think he can get to that elite status if he stays healthy?
So I definitely think he can get to the elite status if he stays healthy. I think it's been shown just like the other night against the Lakers. I mean, he put up a monstrous performance. He had over 40. The question really is, can he stay healthy? And it's been shown time and time again that he has these issues that just keep coming up. And I know everybody talks about his weight. I don't know if his weight is truly an issue. I know they eat good down there in New Orleans. It's good food down there. But, I think if he can stay healthy, he obviously is in an elite category. It's just a matter of if he can stay healthy and keep the weight off and maintain and work the way he needs to work.
Yeah, and Carsen, you and I have watched Zion since his career at Duke started, and it's a little disappointing to see the injury that happened earlier this week. And he was going off. He had 40 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. He was like 17 of 27 shooting. He was unstoppable, and he was leading the Pelicans to a potential victory until his injury, and then the Lakers took over. Are you concerned about the health of Zion Williamson moving forward?
Yeah, I am. But I'm not really surprised at the same time. It kind of just comes with guys with that play style, you know. He's listed at 284 pounds right now. And I think he slimmed down to about probably 275, maybe even 270. But when you're running and jumping that high and with that much force, I mean, your lower body just can't handle that, you know. So I think it's really upsetting because I really do think he could be like an MVP candidate type player. I think he's that good, that strong, that fast. And I just don't think it's ever going to come to fruition. I expect a Derrick Rose type of career where we all see just the enormous potential, and he's a fun guy to watch. And it just never shapes out because of his injuries. He's gonna be a what if. And that's really sad, but I think that's what's going to come.
I hope that's not the case. And he slimmed down from this point last year. He has made the efforts to cut some of his weight. Des, I know where you stand on this. And to be honest, I think it's a little bit unfair where you stand on this. But what's your thoughts? Have you slept on it and changed your mind?
No, absolutely not. Like, what's the matter with you? Like, I don't understand this. Like, this is the same argument we've had for 5 years now. Like, how many times does this kid have to get hurt in the same area of his body, the same type of injury, for you to finally admit that your take is just out of pocket? Like, it has nothing to do with where he played at college. I actually rooted for him at Duke, which made me feel horrible that entire 2019 season because the kid's just a really great kid. But he's the size of an NFL left tackle. Carsen said it. He was listed at 285. Do you realize he was the heaviest player in the entire league at 285 at 6'6"? You can't do it, man. You just can't do it. He's got to get down to like Larry Johnson size, which would be like 240, 245, like for him to be able to have a long career. Think about Zion. How old is Zion right now? Like 22?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somewhere
Think
around
about Zion at 30 if he doesn't lose the weight. He won't be in the league. Like literally, he won't be able to get up and down the court. This is not meant to pick at him or to make fun of him or anything of the sort. I want him to succeed. He was the number 1 overall pick. He should be the future of the league, but he cannot do it at this weight. He just can't. And he knows it. That's why he's been losing weight. He can't play at this weight in the NBA. NBA players run an average of like 3.5 miles a game. And you're expecting this guy to live off his youth basically and play at 280, 270 or whatever, just because he's a phenom in his early 20s. Blake Griffin was a phenom in his early 20s, and he wasn't overweight, and he ended up having a bunch of injuries towards the end as well. Like, you have to start looking forward, especially the Pelicans. They just gave him $200 and something million. Like, you can't weigh this much. It's really that simple. He has to get down below 250 in order to have a long career. Otherwise, he won't. His legs will run out. They're all the same injury. They're all soft tissue, pulls. He hasn't broken any bones. He hasn't had any freak injuries. They've all been like sprains, pulls, things like this. He has a hamstring pull right now, which could happen. He could happen with him walking to the bathroom, literally. Like this is going to keep happening his whole career until he gets his weight under control.
Well, I did look up some of the heavier NBA players, and this isn't fat shaming, but there's 2 guys who are 280 or above, and many consider them 2 of the best players the last 2-3 seasons, and that's Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid.
But they're both 7-footers. They both are 7 foot tall. Zion is 6'6".
They're both 7-footers is the difference.
Yeah. They're like a half a foot taller. Like, if Zion was 6'10", I wouldn't care that he was 285. But
yeah,
he's not. That's the problem. He's shorter than Charles. Well, he's about the same height as Charles Barkley.
Like,
he's just big.
And Stephen
he's
A.
just a
Smith,
big
like,
kid.
and all these big media talking heads will say that he's fat. He's not fat. He's in the best shape of his life right now.
Yeah.
He's like so much muscle and he's strong. But even though it's not about fat, it's about weight, and he's just too heavy. There's no way that your legs can sustain that.
And it's not like he can't lose the weight. He's 22. If you're ever going to be able to lose weight quickly, it's during this time of your life. The older you get, the harder it's going to be to lose weight. And that's my point. Like, you can't expect the NBA, the prime is usually between age 27 to 32 or so, right? Like, when you think of the greats in the NBA, they hit their peak right around there. Where's Zion going to be at 27, 28, 29? Like,
he's going to be
heavier. He'll be heavier unless he gets it under control now, because he's going to naturally gain weight because he's getting older. All of you on this panel that are young and skinny will find out as you get older that you're going to gain weight naturally. It's not going to just burn off. You can't eat, a double Baconator at 2 a.m. and expect it to just not be there in a day. Like, it doesn't happen like that.
Yes, I don't appreciate you coming at me for my eating habits.
I know.
I'm just preparing you for the future, brother. Like, that's what's about to go down. And Zion is going through it right now. And if he really wants that money and the prestige and everything that comes with being a first-round overall pick and the face of the league and all that stuff, he's got to get the weight down. It's as simple as that. And I'm sure he's had these conversations with the Pelicans. This isn't a new conversation. Like, I feel like people feel like I'm picking on him because he went to Duke. And that's not the case. I want him to succeed. I think he's fantastic. But I also am realistic. I understand that he can't play at this weight. Like, when the injury happened, I was just like,
and it's going to be super disappointing because we won't get to see Zion Williamson in action tonight when they play the Kings. We'll predict the game a little later on, but another game that's going to be impacted tonight is the Miami Heat. They play the Chicago Bulls for the 8th seed, and in the first quarter of the Heat 76ers game, Jimmy Butler went down after a collision with Kelly Oubre. He stayed in the game, made his free throws, and then continued to play until layer test shows that he does have a knee injury that's going to keep him out for at least several weeks. If the Miami Heat make it past tonight and make it as far as the Eastern Conference semis, would be likely the next time that Jimmy Butler would see the floor. But if they win tonight, they're going to play Boston, but it's going to be crazy. Jimmy Butler has been known for his playoff history, being playoff Jimmy. Austin, when we talk about age, Jimmy Butler turns 35 this September. How much longer, especially after he's played deep into the playoffs the last few years, how much longer do we get playoff Jimmy?
So I'll go ahead and tell you, you're not getting any more playoff Jimmy this year. The Heat, Kobe White's going to come out and drop something on their head, and then they're going to get swept by the Celtics. But that's another point. Jimmy's got, I think we see time and time again, players can play into their late 30s now. I mean, if you take care of your body, if you do what you need to do, you can play to your 38, 39. I mean, heck, look at LeBron. He's still doing what he does. Now playing on the level that guys like LeBron play on, I don't know if Jimmy's got his playoff Jimmy in him for probably more than another 2 to 3 seasons. I think 37, 38, he already is showing glimpses this year. I mean, you've seen it. He's not been the same Jimmy Butler that we've known for the past 4 or 5 years. And these repeated playoff runs that he's put the Heat on his back for have only wore him down more. So I don't think he has many more in him. And I also think, even if he does, continue to do what he does, I don't think the Heat make another finals run like they have personally.
That would be disappointing for me, to say the least. Carsen, do you agree with Austin, or is he out of pocket?
No, I agree with him. You got to think, like, not everybody is Kevin Durant and Stephen Curry and LeBron James. Like, most people cannot do what these guys are doing right now. And Jimmy Butler, in terms of health and just his body, I think he keeps up pretty well. But still, he's 34. He's going to be hurt. Next time we get to see even the chance of playoff Jimmy, he'll be 35. And my biggest thing is the future of the Eastern Conference. You've got Halliburton and the Pacers. You've got Paulo and the Magic. You've got Brunson and the Knicks. And then obviously you have the Bucks, who I think will be better next year after a year of meshing. And you've got the Celtics, who, I mean, are just a powerhouse. So I don't think that the Heat can make any more of these miraculous runs. I think that, like I said, what they did last year just wasn't replicable, Like, you are not going to be shooting 45% from 3 in every series that you play. And like, they're going to have to start getting like super good matchups, which if you're the 8th seed every year, then you're not going to. So I just think that playoff Jimmy is done. I think that the recipe that got them to the finals last year, and even in 2020, like that stuff doesn't work. It doesn't work again and again and again.
Des, Carsen is trying to bury the legend, playoff Jimmy. Please.
No, I love playoff Jimmy.
Please help resurrect him.
I love playoff Jimmy. I
No,
just don't think
right.
it's going to happen again.
Austin and Carsen are right. Think about Miami. First of all, they're going to probably lose tonight. They've gone way further than they were supposed to 2 out of the past 3 seasons. They've played so many more games postseason wise that it was inevitable that eventually their injuries and things are going to start catching up to them. Eric Spoelstra has probably done one of the greatest jobs in the NBA in terms of squeezing the amount that he got out of this roster, like just to get them to the NBA Finals 2 of the past 3 years, behind Jimmy Butler, who's not your typical NBA star. I would say he's a top 20, 25 player currently in the league right now, but I wouldn't put him in my top 10. Like, I'm not going to give him credit for things he hasn't done. They haven't won an NBA title. And they, to be honest, had a little bit of luck on their paths both times to get to the NBA Finals, kind of avoiding some of the better teams that they would have seen. And one of those was in the bubble. So I'm just, where home court didn't matter, like you could be an 8th seed and you're still playing on the same YMCA court as the other team is with no crowd. So I feel like this is probably it for this version of Miami. With him being 35, I don't know if you build around him because of the type of game he has. It's easier to do it with like a jump shooter like Steph Curry, because you can still be a jump shooter at 38, 39 years old. Ray Allen did the same thing. But the type of game Jimmy plays, where he's driving to the basket, drawing contact, that kind of thing, that's not as sustainable as you get into your late 30s. So I'm not sure what the future holds for Butler and the Miami Heat.
Well, with Miami,
as he gets older, he's going to have to start relying more on drawing free throws, and because he's just not going to be able to get to his spots like he will now. And he's not really an off-ball player, so he's going to have to start relying on like really getting to the free throws or be a better jump shooter. But once you get to the playoffs, like you can't draw free throws like you can in the regular season.
Yeah, they let him play through it.
It's just like his window is closing and closing more just because his play style, which is really, really well suited for the playoffs right now, is not sustainable until he's 38, 39, you know?
Even think of last year, where he had one of those games where he went off like early and then like it just trailed off like towards the end. Like literally you could see his age like on TV. LeBron had the same thing in the Western Conference Finals where he had that huge game and then just trailed off towards the end and kind of held on. Same thing. Father Time's undefeated. Like what LeBron is doing is not the normal. Like that's not supposed to normally happen to any basketball player. For him to continue to be able to do this is amazing and insane, but you can't put that on top of every player that plays in the NBA. Jimmy's not the same genetical build as a LeBron James,
And it's super unfortunate because I've seen Jimmy Butler work so hard to will his team to the NBA Finals in 2020 when some people would say, oh, that's the COVID title, that doesn't count. But imagine going on a basketball court during a pandemic and having no fans to cheer you on, that when you get on a run, there's no motivation from hearing 20, 30,000 people in a stadium, chanting your name, chanting your team, willing them on. And for last year, to be a play-in team, to be discounted, to beat a 1 seed, to beat a 2 seed, to get to the NBA Finals and face like an impossible matchup with Denver. I mean, it would stink for Jimmy Butler to end his career without a championship. And I see since the Heat didn't acquire Damian Lillard and they refused to put Tyler Hero in that deal, they're going to build around Tyler Hero. They're going to build around Bam Adebayo, 2 Kentucky products. Shout out Josh Burton, our Kentucky guy who's usually on the panel. They're going to build around those guys. And so it's going to be interesting. We're going to break down who wins these games tonight. But, we're talking about eras ending. Maybe Golden State and their era as the Warriors is over. But Steve Kerr decided, hey, there's lots of value keeping this Golden State team together. We've touched on it here and there as we've taught the Warriors here the last week. Austin, I really want to hear your take on this. Like, do you see this Warriors window absolutely closed, and should they blow this up to rebuild?
So I don't think that the window is like completely closed on them being a top caliber playoff team, but I think their championship window is closed. The issue that they've done for the past couple of years, and yes, it did result in an NBA championship, is they've been trying to do this balance of the future and the now, with trying to build for the future when Steph Curry and Clay and Draymond are going, but then trying to also put guys around them. And I don't think there's a recipe for success doing that. I think, if you're going to do it, you need to go all in. You need to, give Curry and Clay and Draymond the people around them that they need to succeed, and not try to focus on these young guys. Try to get rid of them, move on from Jonathan Kuminga, get something for him, and try to put the pieces around these guys and pay them. I think Clay deserves his bag. What he's done for that franchise, if nothing else, is a gesture of good deed. And I know the business world isn't all good deeds, but he's brought you millions of dollars. He's elevated your franchise beyond levels that anybody knew in the mid 2000s. And, I think you've got to put the pieces around these guys moving forward to do the final push, man. Like, Curry's a once in a lifetime player. You don't have many more seasons of this man, and you need to put the pieces around him for him to succeed. And I hope they do that. I hope, and I want to see it, because I love Curry. I mean, he was the best player of the 2010s. And it was his era, and I'd love to see it continue.
Yeah, it was awesome watching prime Curry just jack up threes, and he's changed the game because you go to your local YMCA, and that's changed. I love how you mentioned the balance between like veteran players versus introducing young players. Austin and I are in a fantasy basketball league, and while I did come up short this year in the championship and the playoffs, I've tried to mix, the vets like James Harden and LeBron versus a Victor Wembanyama. So
it's a tough balance, and you got to do both, especially in a dynasty league. But in real life, Curry only comes once in a lifetime, and so you've got to go all in my opinion.
Yeah, and if you want more fantasy advice, whether it's football or basketball, SNES Fantasy Football on Instagram does incredible work. Carsen, do you think this Warriors dynasty is coming to an end, or has ended?
Yeah, I think it's probably done. I was really with Austin at the beginning. I think that they still have the ceiling to be a really good basketball team with Stephen Curry, and you've got Draymond Green. But you have to go on. Well, the part I wasn't on board with is Clay sticking around. I think that we, especially with like dynasties like that, we start to get a little sentimental, and that's not how you build a basketball team. Clay is a negative on the floor almost at all times. He still has that chance to go off, and when he does, it's awesome to see. And is Clay back? And it's so much fun. But when his shot's not hitting, we saw it. We saw it on I don't remember when they played, but we saw it against the Kings in the play-in. He was missing his shots. And now what is he doing? He's not a good defender anymore. He is not a good off-ball player anymore. He can't come around screens like he used to. He's not as fast. He's not as agile. He's not getting in the lane. He's not pressuring the rim.
Yeah.
I think you could get so many different players that can do his job, and maybe they can't shoot as well as him. They can't get as hot as him, but they could do his job better at this point. I would say, you could get like a Duncan Robinson or Keegan Murray is untouchable right now, but he is incredible. And he's what Clay used to be, which is a great shooter and a great defender. And Clay's just not that anymore. So I think if you really want to keep this window open, you have to trade, or you have to get rid of Clay, and you have to get rid of Kuminga, and you have to get Curry another like primary creator, because he's just doing everything by himself right now. In games where he doesn't go nuclear, they're not going to win. So I think you either have to get rid of Steph or you have to get rid of Clay and Kuminga.
I couldn't imagine them getting rid of Steph. I know Hornets fans.
And they won't.
Hornets fans are dreaming that Curry will come to Charlotte and end his career. Okay, that may or may not happen. That I feel like that's fantasy booking Sting versus Undertaker for my wrestling fans. Derek Pauly's a wrestling fan. He commented earlier on the YouTube saying, "Like my shirt." You guys, I'm seeing a lot of people on our YouTube channel right now. You can be a part of the show. Your comment can pop up on the screen. We can give you a shout out just like we did Derek right there. But Des, I mean, we're seeing some great eras and dynasties come to an end or get close to an end, but it's not a good sign that the Warriors season ended in the play-in tournament.
Yeah, I mean, and they've been in the play-in tournament the past couple of years. Like this isn't like the first sign that the dynasty had cracks in it. I actually watched a Stephen A. Smith clip from the Stephen A. Smith show, I think yesterday, and he was talking about the Warriors, and he basically said it's Draymond's fault. Draymond was suspended for 20 games this year. And in the games that the games he played, I think after the All-Star break, the Warriors were like 28-15. It was like the 5th best record in the NBA. And the games without him, they had a losing record. I personally think it's time to blow it up, like the whole thing. I would trade the entire big three. I'd trade Draymond, I'd trade Clay, and I would trade Steph, because you're not going to get as big of a value back from them as you would right now, and basically do what OKC just did over the past couple of years and load up on picks. You just built $1 billion stadium in San Francisco downtown. Doing what Carsen just said, to me, it's just like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. It's eventually it's still going to be the same problem. You're just extending out the feel good of what happened in the past. I think them winning in 2021, the whole thing kind of made people feel like that this could go for another 5 or 6 years, when really that was the last hurrah, and it took all of Steph Curry to get that done in that series to begin with. So I feel like, yes, I am a Charlotte Hornets fan. I do stuff for all Hornets on Sports Illustrated. And if I was the Hornets, I would try to trade. I'd trade LaMelo Ball and 3 first-round picks for Steph Curry, like right now, and bring Steph bring Steph into Charlotte, and you build around him and Brandon Miller and Mark Williams. And it's a better young nucleus than what he has in Golden State. So you do that. You trade Draymond to the Lakers. His agent's the same, Rich Paul, same as LeBron. They're friends. You can get something out of that. And Clay's dad, Mikhail Thompson, played for the Lakers, back in the 80s during those dynasty runs. He was a starter. So, I mean, there's always been an attraction with both of them and the Lakers somewhere down the line. And the Lakers could potentially work something, maybe a 3-way trade or something, to actually get something back. The key here is for Golden State to come away with assets and admit, okay, we're going to need a year or two to kind of put this back together. But the days of them, winning 65 games and being the 1 seed and everything else. You got to look at the Western Conference. Like the Western Conference right now, from the top 6 teams, they're all young teams that are really, really good with all-stars on them. Golden State's not going to get any younger unless they trade off what they have and get something back for it in the draft starting after this year, because this draft sucks, to be honest. But going forward, next year's draft's going to be loaded, and you want to be in position to put some pieces together. They stumbled into Steph Curry. Steph Curry wasn't a top 3 pick. Steph Curry was like the 9th overall pick after a bunch of teams, including the Knicks, passed him. I think twice. I think the Knicks passed him twice before Golden State drafted him. So, I mean, you see they stumbled into this dynasty. Like it wasn't like planned. Like they were kind of stumbling around before Steph. So I would trade them now while you've got the most value on them to start the rebuild. I know I feel like I sound like Jerry Krause right now. And it's like, I love the Warriors. I love their style of play. The only time I didn't like them were the 2 years when they had Durant, or the 3 years they had Durant. But I think it's time to rebuild. And I would literally get on the phone with Charlotte and be like, hey, what would you do if we said we'd trade you Steph for LaMelo and you could throw us a couple of firsts? Because we just got those from the trades we did at the trade deadline. So they've got the pieces. It's not as crazy as it sounds.
It's
Steph Curry and Brandon Miller would be such an incredible, beautiful basketball fit. The gravity that Steph brings, Brandon Miller is going to be wide open. He can already shoot, and then he can drive and kick back to Steph Curry coming off a screen.
Who's that would be like? A younger version of Klay Thompson.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Is Brandon Miller is just a better, younger version of Klay Thompson with his shooting ability, but Brandon Miller can pressure the rim more. Klay was probably a better defender, but Brandon is still a very good defender, and he's a great playmaker. That would be so incredible to watch, and Charlotte would gather around that. So it would be incredible. They would probably be, if that happened, they would probably be top 3 team in the East.
I was going to say top 5 at least.
Austin, that sounds out of pocket to me.
That sounds out of pocket to me.
Well, look at the Eastern standings. They're all bunched together. Yeah. Like the Knicks were the 2 seed, and they were only separated from the 8 seed by 4 games or something like that. So it's not like there's a lot of separation in the Eastern Conference. And it's the same thing. It's a bunch of young teams. The Knicks, I don't know if you say the Bucks are young, but the Bulls are young. The Hawks are young. Boston's relatively young. Like they're all relatively young teams. You drop a Steph Curry in Charlotte, and you still have Brandon Miller and a healthy Mark Williams in the paint. They could compete in the East. They really could. They weren't healthy this year. That's why we still don't know what we have. They all played together.
Yeah.
But
and the amount of space that Mark Williams would have too. And the only team that would be concretely better than them to me would be Boston.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bucks are not concretely better than that team. If they get Steph, the Knicks aren't. Like the East is weak right now. If you give them Steph Curry and they still have Brandon Miller and they still have Mark Williams, like that's I don't want to say a title contender, but that's an Eastern Conference Finals contender.
All the veterans, the older players went to the West. Like when LeBron went to the West, everybody else kind of went that way too. Kawhi, Paul George, like all these guys went that way, and all the young guys are over in the East. But then the young guys that are already in the West ended up becoming better than the vets that left to come to the West in the first place, which is why you've got Minnesota and OKC and Denver at the top of the Western Conference, and you've got the Lakers and the Warriors in the 9 and 10 spots or whatever, or the 8 and 10 spots or whatever ended up being at the end, with all these veteran players on them, like former All-Stars.
Yeah, and we'll probably have a whole segment on a potential Hornets Warriors trade. But before we get out, I want to ask you guys, who wins tonight's play-in games? We got the Bulls and we got the Heat, and then we got the Kings and the Pelicans. Austin, who are your 2 teams to advance?
Quickly, the Chicago Bulls are going to wipe the Heat without Jimmy Butler. In my opinion, Kobe White's going to drop a nuke on their head again. And then, honestly, I think the Sacramento Kings are probably going to beat the Pelicans. I mean, no Zion, the Pelicans don't have that guy that can get to their spot and get their shot like they need with Zion. So it's going to be a Kings wipe.
Will agrees with Austin. Carsen, what about you?
I don't think it's going to be a wipe. I do think Kobe White's probably going to go pretty nuclear. I do like what the Heat still have over there with Tyler Hero and Terry Rozier, and Bam Adebayo will lock things down to the paint. I think it's going to be close, and I'm actually I'm gonna take a Heat. I'm gonna take a Heat win just because Eric Spoelstra is still gonna be Eric Spoelstra. You know, I'm gonna take the Heat.
Smart man.
Sorry,
Des?
Will.
I can't see the Heat winning without Jimmy Butler tonight. And again, like I said, they've played so many games the past 3 years. People forget that, like how many games this core unit's played in the postseason along with the regular season. They've been banged up like most of the year too. So I joked the other day that the Bulls were just kind of here, like because they needed 10 teams to kind of do this play-in tournament, and that's why the Bulls were invited. But shout out to my boy Kobe White. I actually, first time I ever saw Kobe White, I actually called a basketball game with him in it. It was the Josh Level Classic in Greensboro at Dudley High School. The season in between him becoming a freshman at Carolina, and he scored 40 points in that game. And while we were doing the game, we looked at the box score at the end. And we're like, how did Kobe White score 40 points? It didn't feel like he scored 40 points, but he was literally all over the place. The Langley twins were in that game. I think Bam Adebayo came in to watch. There was a lot of Harry Giles was there. Like there was a lot of, it was an all-star game. It's an all-star game they do every year in Greensboro. And I saw him for the first time there. So, I mean, Kobe is a bucket. So if they unleash him, like he kind of got unleashed the other night, and he can play free like he was at Carolina, I think the Bulls win that game pretty easily. The other game, what was the other game again?
The Kings Pelicans.
Kings Pelicans. Same thing, no Zion. I'm going to give it to the Kings. The Kings have a little bit more experience playoff-wise from their run last year. And without Zion, you can basically focus on Brandon Ingram, and that's really it for the Pelicans. So kind of sad to see. Pelicans played well. Zion played most of the year for the first time, it feels like. And then for it to end the way like this, it just kind of feels like, here we go again. But I'm going to go with the Kings over the Pelicans too.
Yeah, Des and Austin are not thinking the teams can overcome injuries. For the Kings Pelicans, I don't think they'll overcome the injuries. I'm going to take the Kings with their playoff push from last year, helping them propel them to a win tonight. But for Miami should get back Duncan Robinson. Duncan was actually active last game and didn't play. I'm kind of shocked he didn't play, but if they get him involved in the rotation, he can knock down some big threes. And I haven't trusted Chicago all year in any game, but I'll take Eric Spoelstra, coach of the year, coach of the decade, if you will. And I'm going to say the Heat claim that final 8th spot, even if it ends in the first round of the Eastern Conference playoffs, at least they'll get there. But we are out for the weekend. We are out of time. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We had huge numbers on our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to Tobacco Road's YouTube channel. We'll be off air Monday, but Out Pocket will be back on Tuesday. We'll probably do some NBA playoff recap, NFL talk, maybe slip in some Top Rope Tuesday with some wrestling. But for your host, Michael Davis, Austin Summers from SNES Fantasy Football, go follow them on Instagram, Carsen Williams, and then producer Desmond Johnson. We all hope you have an incredible weekend, and we'll see you back on Out Pocket Tuesday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time.